Here's Shed. Off the window, no. Roberts tried to get it. Shed for the win. Got it. Jamal Shed plays the hero again.
Back to pass. Donovan Smith. Smith steps up in the pocket, unloads it, throws it all the way downfield into the end zone. Tipped, and it is caught. Caught by the Cougars. Caught for a touchdown. Unbelievable. Caught by Stephon Johnson.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott and Holm podcast. We are well and truly into the month of December, and with that, the usual football movement. We got transfer portal stuff to talk about. We got coaching stuff to talk about. A new coach coming in, and unfortunately, coach we probably didn't want to see leaving the Cougar football staff, take another position. Obviously, lots of basketball to talk about in the league tonight, and a number of other Cougar sports happening as well. Bobby, how you doing, friend?
Great, man. It is winding down into year, even though that doesn't mean work slows down for me. But, end of the year, Christmas is upon us. Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate is near, and making those plans and doing all that kind of stuff. Actually, really excited. You might be listening to this on a plane, but our friend Ben is flying from overseas for Christmas to come see some people, and he's going to be in the same city that my parents live in, and so I'm going to go down and see him this weekend. So him, his wife, and his new daughter. So really excited about that.
I was thinking about how many years that we've known Ben, and that's certainly old enough to have a driver's license at this point, which is
absolutely
something to think about. But glad he'll be stateside for Christmas. And yeah, anyone who's not going home for Christmas, I think it was a tough time for people. I personally am not going back for Christmas this year, for the holiday, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, if you're someone who is not going for Christmas, it is a tough time for you. 988 as always. Don't do PSAs on here very often, but like if you need someone to talk to this time of year, tough time of year for some of y'all out there. It's been my one public service announcement for the calendar year 2024.
You have my full support on that one. We didn't even discuss that beforehand.
No, exactly.
Absolutely 100% stamp that one, buddy.
Exactly. Going from the public service announcement to the capitalism service announcement, the capitalism benefit here being the Scott Holm podcast. If you don't already, please consider supporting the work that Bobby and I do here on a weekly basis. All joking about making money aside, not in it for the money here, because we love talking Cougars, and surprisingly, a large number of people genuinely enjoy listening to what we do. Not to flatter what we do here too much, but if you like that and don't do so already, patreon.com/SH podcast. You're getting a basketball bonus episode. You're getting premium content that Bobby and I put out. You're getting early access to stuff like the instant react we did to the offensive coordinator dismissal during the Thanksgiving week. So if you want to help defray that labor of love, patreon.com/SH podcast. So I'm going to leave with Cougar men's basketball because you feel like the top 15 basketball team deserves to lead here, coming off two wins that I don't think, when we look at the season in totality, we're not going to look back and be like, oh, the Butler win, great moment from the season, the Butler win, like the Troy win. Probably not, other than the holding Troy to 11 points in the first half. There are probably not going to be a ton of things from these past two games that are going to end up on the season highlight reel. But I think two very encouraging data points, two encouraging wins. Going to start with Butler, if you were good with that, Bobby. I think that game was a really nice reminder of how good this Cougar men's basketball team can be, especially playing at the Fertitta Center, because as much as the three losses this season, has seen from the Cougars so far, kind of, expose some flaws, kind of expose some areas that individuals or the team need to improve in. I don't think we lose to Auburn, Bama, or San Diego State if those games are at Fertitta. That's not super meaningful because, you play the games where you play them, but I think a reminder that I think all needed, that this team might not be playing in top 5 form at the moment, but there also are a whole lot of basketball teams out there that are going to be able to beat the Cougars at home. There might not be any on the schedule this year. I'm still, if you gave me an over-under of a half loss at home this year, I think I might take the under. That's still how confident I am that this team is at home. Away from home might be a work for a little bit longer. Bobby, what did you see from the Butler game that you think is worth talking about here?
I mean, it was just a masterclass in Kelvin Sampson basketball, right? You just kind of look at the stats, and I think I sent that to you about halfway through the first half, right? A quarter of the way through the game. I think I sent you, Yeah, this just feels like a Kelvin Sampson game. Like, this is, if you told Kelvin Sampson, I want you to play basketball, you could have your dream basketball game. I would have said this until the next game, which we'll talk about here in a second, but I thought it while watching it, and then after looking at the stats getting ready for this podcast, you just kind of look at it and you go, Butler, 28% field goal percentage. And the most important thing to every Cougar victory is just out-rebounding them, and not by a little bit either. I mean, you talk rebounds 41-22. That's absolutely insane. The Cougs had 13 offensive rebounds compared to Butler's 15 defensive rebounds. That's insane to think about. That on one end of the court, does it
2 or 3 times a year where you're like,
where you're just, there's one end of the basket, there were 28 rebounds, and you almost got half of them, and you were on offense. Like, that's a crazy thing to think about. You don't see that very often. Where you do see it, to your point, is Kelvin Sampson games where that's what the team does. And, this offense sometimes, not this year, but in the past is, stagnated a little bit at times. And how we've won is on a possession, we'll get 3 tries at the basket. It's like, we'll make 1 out of 3. This year, now we're getting those second chance options, and we're making them. So and we always kind of joke that maybe our rebounding numbers were inflated a little bit because we wouldn't make shots all the time, and so sometimes that happens, but it hasn't been the case this year. In this game, you got to play 12 guys. That's huge. That's just kind of high level here. Looking at other things, Tugler and Javier Francis playing 19 and 14. You can tell they're still not back all the way yet. And I think that we're going to see more and more of them as the season goes on. Not to say that they had bad minutes or anything like that, but Javier getting 14 minutes, 2 points, 4 rebounds. You think you get a little bit more from Javier a little bit later in the season. So what did you think, Sam?
From this one, I would put LJ Cryer's second half up there with maybe his first half against Bama as the best half of basketball he's played this season, and one of the best he's had since he joined the U of H program, period. I mean, 18 points in the second half alone, but what I think stood out to me most when I rewatched this game, because I watched the first half on my phone live, Cryer didn't shoot the ball well in the first half, but he had a great half doing the non-shooting things that we've needed to see improvement from. LJ Cryer needs to be a net positive for stretches of the game when his shot isn't falling, because no player in college basketball is going to be a perfect machine who never has stretches of a game or games where the shot isn't falling or isn't falling as much as maybe it normally does. I mean, he had 3 assists in the first half, which I think kind of reflects that from this game. He played the majority of one of the stronger defensive halves I think we're going to see from Cougar basketball this year, holding Butler to 18, although you immediately topped it in the next game. So, I guess expect too little of this Cougar team at your own peril. But he held a team that hadn't scored fewer than in the 70s for this game. In their previous 6 games prior to that, they ended up doing that, and they lost North Dakota State last night, and they did it in the lost to Austin Peay in week 1 for them. But a team definitely playing their best offensive basketball coming into the game held them to 5 of 25 from the field. Like that's crazy stuff. All that's a team effort. But LJ Cryer was on the floor for 35 of those 40 minutes, so he certainly deserves as much credit as you're going to give any one individual player for this game. And you did have Miles Uzan, unfortunately, get into foul trouble inside of 9 minutes left. At that point in the game, the margin 17. So I don't think I was concerned in real time the same way maybe you were in some of the previous games. It wasn't a here we go again moment, but I think the notable part there is that the Cougs didn't just cling on to win that. Uzan didn't play the final 8:37 of this game, and U of H was plus 11 to close out this opponent. That's a big step in the right direction. That's you being better at something that you were notably not very good at previously. Context there, Butler is not as good as the 3 teams you lost to by varying degrees, but the goal is twofold. The goal, I think, probably more importantly, Uzan needs to improve at defending without fouling as often against the better opponents. But 2, you need to figure out who the offense is going to run through and just functioning properly when Uzan's on the bench, because you don't want to play him 40 minutes a game unless you absolutely have to. So that was my biggest takeaway. Kind of interesting. Tugler, you mentioned Tugler and Francis. JoJo Tugler started this game and ended up starting Troy over Javier Francis. Is there something there? I mean, I don't. The guys played pretty similar minutes in this one, and I think that mostly held for the Troy game after this. I don't know what's there, but I feel like anytime Kelvin Sampson makes a lineup change, it's notable. He definitely likes to stick with a 5, barring injury. Like when he makes a change, it's something you notice because he really does over the course of a season does not tinker around with that starting 5 very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree with you there. Definitely something to just kind of note. The other kind of takeaway that I had from the game, and this is something I've kind of been bouncing around in my head a little bit, starting to get a little concerned about Wani here. On one end, in terms of 26 minutes, 2 points. That was kind of a nice bonus that this team had last year, that Wani would suddenly hit you for 10. You could get 10, 12 out of Wani, and it was just that kind of thing that you had that would just kind of put you over the top. Seeing Wani with 2 points, he hasn't shown up a ton offensively. Not to say that I don't trust that he's going to get back or something like that. Just something I've just kind of noticed. But what Wani did do, 12 boards, 4 offensive rebounds, 8 defensive rebounds, 12 boards. Look, if Wani's not going to put it in the bucket, if Wani's getting me 12 boards and 2 blocks, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, really good rebounding performance. The rebounding you mentioned earlier, really setting the tone, and Butler not being able to handle you there, started with Wani Roberts.
Yep.
Terrence Arsenault, I got to mention him. I really like offensively. I mean, I wish we could get Roberts more involved. I co-sign everything you say about that. I think it's a function partially of this being a much better perimeter shooting team. Like you weren't able to get nearly. I mean, like Sharp and Cryer were both solid 3-point shooters last year, maybe even slightly better than solid. Might be underselling them there a bit, but you couldn't get that much of your offense there. And I don't want to say it's going to hold that you're going to be the second best 3-point shooting team in the country all season like you are right now, but I feel like you have enough basketball to say, like, okay, like this team might not finish second, but they're not going to all of a sudden become really bad at shooting the 3. Like this is like LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp will raise the floor such that even if you regress there a bit, it's not going to be that much. So almost wonder like what you do offensively. How does Wani fit into that? Like what you do offensively this year is going to be a bit different than what you did last year with that group of guys. It's going to be different a little bit every season, but I don't know if you've ever had this much of a glut of guys who can make 3-pointers. Like Uzan can as well, JoJo Tugler periodically. Like, but I do like the contrast of having your 4 best scorers, which I think right now you'd say fair to say through the season that list of guys in no order is LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, Terrence Arsenault, and Uzan. Maybe roughly in that order. Would you say those are your best 4 scorers right now?
Yeah, I think so.
So I like that 2 of those guys. I mean, I think Sharp's gotten better at driving to the basket, but if you had to ask me like what's the best thing about his game, I would say it's probably perimeter oriented. It's his 3-point shooting, his ability to make a tough shot, be the go-to guy. Kind of like you and I have talked about, maybe Sharp's that go-to guy. But you'd say probably if you had to say perimeter oriented versus drive to the basket, probably 2 more perimeter oriented guys versus Arsenault and Uzan, who I think can shoot it from 3, but are probably a little more comfortable like driving to the hole. Like I think I like that contrast between those 4 guys. I think that was kind of on display in this game, and just love the way Arsenault really commands the ball, really takes ownership, is the go-to guy. I would put him up there from what we've seen through these first less than 10 games. Like I'd put him up there with Dejan Giroux in terms of bench guys who've really been impactful and really looked like really given you a spark. Like we've had some really good teams, but we haven't always had teams with a bench guy you trust that level. I don't know if I would say last year's team. Like last year's team had some good guys off the bench, but I didn't have a guy like Terrence Arsenault this year.
Especially after the injuries, for sure.
Just looks like an entirely, and you didn't take that as a given. Like he had Achilles injuries are pretty serious. Like had a really long layoff off that, and looks like the guy doesn't look like a guy who missed nearly all of last season. And that's been my over and over again as I've gone from my Word document and put my notes together. It's just like this guy's confidence is just crazy. Like this might be the last year we see of Terrence Arsenault here, and not because I think he's hitting the portal. Like that's like a guy his size who could score in the ways he can and finally has some confidence, is willing to do the defensive and rebounding stuff like Sampson asked of his guys. Weird to say about a bench guy, but Bobby, I think that's a pro right there. or a pro after the season. Pro general. Obviously, I think we both agree that the guy is eventually going to be a pro basketball player of some variety, but like it's been remarkable to see. Like I don't know if it's been an every game thing, but it's been a most games thing with him. And that was one of my biggest takeaways from this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I co-sign all that completely.
And you also had last night on Tuesday night a dominant defensive performance. Alluded to it earlier. If you're listening, you're certainly aware. But the Cougars held the Troy Trojans, a team that had scored 80+ in 2 of their last 3 games, Bobby, to 11 points in the first half, a program record. When I picture Kelvin Sampson basketball in my mind's eye, when you say a 3-word phrase out loud, I picture the first 20 minutes of this game against Troy. The defensive effort was outstanding. I don't know how many other good adjectives I could throw at it. It was anytime you hold your opponent to 11 points, like that's really notable. And maybe that accomplishment doesn't hit the same if, I don't know, this opponent was one of the worst teams in Division I, like one of your dregs of the SWAC or MEAC kind of opponents. We've seen the Cougars play them past and present, but Troy, Bobby, by any available metric, is one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the Sun Belt. I think they're still second in KenPom in the Sun Belt after this game. I think that only magnifies how unbelievable it is that the Cougars did this to a solid opponent. Like the Cougars did this to, but even after this loss, a team that you go to KenPom, like pretty good margin between Troy and Hofstra, which was the second best probably by game team to play at this point, which not retracting anything what I said at the beginning, that this won't be, other than the holding them to 11 points in the first half, one of your more memorable moments this season. But I think even with the fact that, you only beat them by 20, like maybe it's the margin isn't as gaudy. I still think a good positive step in the right direction for this team. They really needed a good week.
Yeah, I mean, look at what they did against Arkansas, right? 65-49, Arkansas
let them at half,
wins by 16. Let them at half. 11 points is an insane number. I mean, that is Cougar women's basketball levels of
oh man.
Oh,
you're not wrong.
Did I say that? My bad, guys. It's one of those things that just makes you question. If you're Troy, right, it just makes you question who you are as a basketball team. It's those kind of performances where you're just like, what are we doing here? Like, what is happening right now? You know, and you just came out. Do you love giving up 31 the next half and technically losing the second half? No, but you know, at the end of the day, you held them to 11 with their starters and mostly your starters in the game too. So, you know, I said Butler was this perfect Kelvin Sampson game, and then this game happened, and it's like, okay, I take it back. This is the perfect Kelvin Sampson game. I think Butler was more of a Kelvin Sampson game in terms of numbers and full game performance. You can definitely tell the Cougs took their foot off the accelerator here, but it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. 24% shooting in a game in which they scored 31 points in a half. Like, they scored 31 in the second half, and they still only shot 24%. What else can you say? You played a bunch of guys. I think, you played 12 again. Wani comes back, puts up 6 and 9 here. What a nice performance there. 22 from LJ Cryer. And you had kind of mentioned it with the Butler game. LJ Cryer just kind of coming out here and not cooling off. I think there's been times where we see LJ Cryer get out there and he kind of puts up some good performances and then he just kind of cools off and you go, if we could just see it for a full game. Man, I think we got it in a full game here from LJ Cryer.
That was my first note, actually, was that I didn't want in this incredible defensive performance get lost, that LJ Cryer did a really fantastic job building on that great second half he had against Butler. And momentum game to game, a little hard to quantify that sometimes, but to go from out this great second half against Butler, 18 points, just raving how good he was in that one, to immediately going out and being your best offensive player by a wide margin. And like, I love low-scoring basketball as much as it would have been very funny for me to be like a 28-11 or 25-11 as opposed to the 32-11 that you actually had, or 33-11 that you actually had at the half. I liked that in that low scoring ish basketball that we had LJ Cryer still shooting well. That is really a guy that I think we want him to get his confidence off the ground in a permanent way. Like this month isn't going to give you very many super meaningful matchups. All respect to the Butler Bulldogs and Troy Trojans, two solid teams, better than the first three bye games we played this season at home. More meaningful that way, but not a team that maybe Butler will probably be. I think Butler's probably a reasonable analog of like a low end Big 12 team. I'd say that's probably give you a similar look to like an Oak State or someone like that. So in that sense, like, okay, well, it's good to see we're still far and away better than will probably be one of the worst Big 12 teams, but getting that much out of it. But to see him do everything you want to do, that's fantastic. He started the year kind of slow, had that really strong start against Bama, then kind of went cold over various points over his time in Vegas. Only speaking for myself here, I think we're starting to now see the fifth-year LJ Cryer we were hoping to see in the preseason. Also extremely inconsequential, but I made a note. I was like, I have to mention this. He should have 1 assist. He threw this absolute beauty of a no-look pass like late in the first half to Arsenault. And not to go after someone I spent an extended period praising earlier, but Arsenault just kind of didn't go up with clean with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, LJ Cryer should have an assist. All that stuff, you should also have like a 1 assist at the end of that LJ Cryer performance. I would also ask Cougar fans to keep in mind, this was a 62-31 game before the final few minutes. Troy goes on an 11-0 run with a lot of the end of the bench guys on there. It was a healthy margin of victory regardless, but this is another one where the final margin probably doesn't even convey what a butt kicking this was. This game in Butler, to say what I've said probably a few different times already, just a reminder of how unbelievably good of a defensive team this is going to be. Like, I think the offense might still be a work in progress, but I'm confident saying this is a top 2 or 3 in the country defense. This is an extremely good defensive team. And I think it's gonna win you a lot of basketball games in a tough league this year.
Yeah, I think that's always kind of been a question with a lot of Sampson's teams is, can they score enough? It's kind of what has plagued this team in the tournament year after year. The games that you end up not advancing, a lot of times it's the offense just couldn't quite get over the hump. So I think I hate to say this, but we're seeing the same thing. Maybe there's been some things that have changed, but at the end of the day, a Sampson team's going to do well on a Sampson team's going to do well on the defensive end, and can they score enough? And I think we're starting to see the emergence of an offense that might be able to score enough. It seems like everyone's kind of finally getting used to Milos, and things are starting to gel. I said this to start the season. I think this team will be better in February than it is currently, and I don't see that changing.
Just having four scorers of the level of frankly, you could swap out Uzan / Roberts, and also Uzan for what he's flashed at times, Roberts for what he's flashed before the season, but also Arsenault, Sharp, and Cryer. Like, I think there's a high offensive ceiling there. Some things to work through, but very high ceiling. I think we agree on that. So we will almost certainly be recording before this game happens, and we'll preview that more in depth then, but we'll just note very briefly that Cougar men's basketball will be back in action next Wednesday, a week from tonight, Wednesday the 18th, at home against Toledo. I got one more piece of Cougar men's basketball. Oh, no biggie, Bobby. A consensus top 10 in the country recruit committed to Cougar men's basketball in the past couple of weeks. Like, is
that a big deal?
For all the things this program has done on court, and that's a lot of really good ones, the novelty of just like, oh yeah, like you're gonna have 2 consensus 5 stars and probably a third guy who should be one. And like, from what I've seen from Bryce Jackson, I don't follow Houston prep basketball that closely, but that he has been far away the best player on one of the best teams. I bet that guy doesn't finish I bet when they do the final eval on him, he's not a 3-star when it's all said and done. And that's the 4th guy I'm mentioning in this class. This is going to be a really fucking good recruiting class. And Chris Cenac, I feel like, is the cherry on top of that. A couple weeks late on this one, guys. Sorry for that. But obviously this rises the level of recruiting story that we want to talk about on this show in a cycle where it's giving you 2 of your highest profile recruits this century, Isaiah Harwell and Kingston Flemings. Almost improbably, you're bringing in an even higher rated guy, Chris Cenac Jr., originally from New Orleans, plays for Link Academy, one of the better prep schools out there. It's in Missouri. Played previously at Isidore Newman, which is also the alma mater of one Arch Manning and his famous uncles as well. The absolute lowest, Bobby, Cenac is rated by any recruiting services 10th overall in this current senior class. 247 and ESPN have him as the top power forward in this class as well. Every good SEC program and many other non-SEC programs were in on him, but as I could find it, it was us and Auburn and LSU were the two finalists. Before I pass off to you, I think what excites me most about Cenac is reading in all the evals of him that despite being an elite prospect, consensus 5-star, one of the highest ranked guys out there, he's a bit rawer than your average truly elite prospect. To me, hearing that guy that's already ranked this high is still like he still hasn't scratched the surface. That's so exciting. You've seen multiple places listing him as having a 7'3" wingspan. I mean, man, good luck getting shots up against a front court that's going to be Cenac, JoJo Tugler, and probably Javier Francis next. No, he's a senior. Never mind. Good luck getting shots up against Tugler and Cenac, which is what I should have just led with originally. Bobby, what do you think about the latest Cougar men's basketball commit?
Yeah, he gives us something that we haven't really seen under Sampson, and that's a true big man. 6'10". I see him listed as a center in some places, power forward in others. But, that's not like a shot at any of our current big men, right? But I'd say they're undersized. They're 6'8", Wani's 6'8", JoJo's 6'8". We got a 6'10" guy coming in, and for me, that's really exciting. Watching some of his highlight videos, obviously they're highlight videos, so you're going to see, all the good in it. But the thing that I noticed is he can shoot from everywhere on the floor. He was taking guys to the basket. Things you expect to see from a consensus 5-star top 15 recruit in the country. Not like I'm breaking news here by saying, hey, this guy's good, But I love the idea of him and Mercy or him and Arsenault running a pick and roll next year. It's going to be dangerous for some people because he can pop out and shoot as well. So that's overall really exciting. Reading a couple of the reports, a couple of people mentioned that they question his mentality and his hustle at times. But, buddy, if you're playing for Kelvin Sampson, those aren't options. That is not a concern. You will not play if that happens. And look, if you're not hustling and you're not diving for loose balls and things like that, one, you wouldn't commit to Houston if you're not willing to do those things. And two, you'll be here 1 year.
Yeah, and Sampson wouldn't, obviously, and frankly, I think he points it out pretty often that most guys don't come in with what he wants, mentally. You form and mind-blowing here. You coach guys. You actually, you help mold them to be the kind of player you want them to be. This is a crazy thing. Bobby and I are really breaking stuff here.
How dare we?
You know what I mean? But I really do feel like you see, even with some Tiffany programs, I don't want to impugn Bill Self, a very recent national champion, a very good coach, too much, but it doesn't feel like they develop. Again, I feel like they get some good out of the box players. Like Hunter Dickinson came there as a good player, like that kind of stuff. Anyway, leave that aside. I think trust Sampson that he doesn't have any perfect, I guess, mentality now to be able to get him there. That he's a guy that can get there and can do the things expected of this program. Really excited what our lineup's going to look like next year. Much as I don't want to lose focus on the present because the present is extremely good basketball team. But I mean, how many of these three of the Harwell, Flemings? I would say Flemings probably doesn't start if Uzan is back, and I would expect Uzan to be back. I think he'll finish the year pretty strong, and I really like the 1-2 of Uzan and Flemings can kind of be the second team point guard, work with that unit, and kind of get comfortable there, not having to be a freshman point guard playing for Kelvin Sampson. Like there's so many right answers to that question. Is the definition of a champagne problem?
Yeah, that's a problem I love having.
Yep. A problem I don't love having, Bobby, is that the Houston Cougar football team is looking for a new coordinator, and not on the offensive side of the ball, which we got to hire there. We're going to talk about that, but unfortunately, Houston Cougar football about a week ago. Unfortunately, again, just after we recorded a podcast about Houston Cougar sports, we got the unpleasant news that the decidedly more successful. The two coordinators U of H employed this year, defensive coordinator Shiel Wood, would be leaving to take the same job at Texas Tech. It's never good news. You lose a quality coordinator and multiply that when it's an in-state conference foe like Texas Tech. That sucks. Won't spin that. If you're wondering about the why, I think it's pretty simple and doesn't have that much to do with each team's on-field fortunes, other than the fact that Tech was in the market for a defensive coordinator by virtue of being a terrible defensive team last season, or I guess this current season that's about to conclude. It's dollars and cents, man. Tech was paying their previous defensive coordinator over $1 million. U of H is paying Shiel Wood $750K. Haven't seen the contract details out yet, but if I had to guess, he'll be getting somewhere around $500,000 more to coach at Tech than we use at U of H. So great defensive coordinator here. Sucks he's going to be with the conference rival.
Yeah, and not even like, this sounds terrible to say, but like losing him to a bigger program, and I know Tech is better right now, but like I always felt like we were kind of on Tech's level, not money-wise, but just like prestige-wise, even when we were in a lower conference, it always felt like we were, yes, they were a little bit better than us, even when we were like in the American and stuff, but like it never felt like they had that much more money than us. It never felt like they were doing that much better than us. We talk about the money and they're paying their DC over $1 million a year. What were we paying? What's his name? Who was on the last staff?
Belk.
Yeah,
pretty
wasn't
good.
He making, wasn't he over $1 million?
Yeah, after he had that the 21 season, he was making a pretty good salary.
Yeah,
paying the piper on that one for those last 2 years of just shit defense. But anyway.
Yeah, and so I was just like, huh. When I heard how much he was making, I just looked it up. He was making $1 million in 2022, and now we're dropping down. It's kind of like, oh. And so I don't love losing him to Tech. I think I understand if you lose him to like, oh, he left and went to Michigan, or he left and went to Tennessee or something like that. He left and went to Tech. Oh, gosh, like that one hurts. It's not losing him that hurts. I mean, it does, but it's who you lost him to too. Like it's kind of like losing a football game on a Hail Mary for the other team's first conference win ever, like that's gotta suck. Like I couldn't imagine going through that, and that's what I imagine this feels like that did, or like a team you held out of a conference for a long time coming into your house and beating you in their first year in that conference you tried to keep them out of. I feel like it would feel like that, and it sucks. You don't want to lose them to Tech, so.
You can talk about loyalty or anything else. No coach out there is turning down something in the ballpark of a 40% raise that we couldn't match to stay at U of H. That's just not living in reality.
Sorry, just to jump in real quick to your point. Like I always say, like if I didn't have the connection at U of H that I do as an alum and that kind of stuff, yeah, I'm leaving too. Like it was the same thing when Sumlin left. Everyone was like outraged, and how could he not? I'm like, he was going to an SEC school that we were in Conference USA or the American at the time. I can't even remember. And it's like, no, I totally get it. He just doesn't have the loyalty to U of H that I do because he didn't go to U of H, Yeah,
I took something in the ballpark of that. It's probably closer to 50-60% in my personal life to leave a job that I liked to go out here, man. It's like,
yeah,
you the listener would probably do the same if given the opportunity for professional life. Shiel Wood doesn't have the connection to U of H that you and I and everyone listening does. So we'll say it's been a while since Texas Tech. How did DC do well in that job? You probably have to go back to Ruffin McNeil, who was Mike Leach's last DC there. Was I think briefly interim coach and then was at ECU for a good run there. But Wood's track record as a DC is pretty unimpeachable. And frankly, if it doesn't work out, he's had a couple of years probably of $1 million plus salary. Like that's it. Uncomfortable truth right now. Texas Tech doesn't feel like a bigger program. Agree with everything you said there, Bobby, and how that feels losing him. That's a program that is bringing in a whole lot more money than U of H right now, beyond just having the full Big 12 revenue share that U of H is going to have hit till next summer. I'm not going to try to get on my soapbox here. Chances are if you're listening, you're somebody who already gives to U of H and supports this program a fair bit, and it'd just be me griping at people who already support the program like we do. But moves like this underscore how important it is to give this program, and that don't want to give our old athletic director, who I don't think very much of personally and professionally, much credence, but he was right when he said the work starts now. And this is the thing you're working not to have happen, is to lose a coach like Shiel Wood, who was instrumental to what success you were able to have this year and is a really good defensive coordinator. I think it's worth saying one more time before we let him go off to Tech and not probably mention him again.
Yep.
I will say, I want to give two candidates. I want to end on a positive note there. I want to sell you on two candidates I like for this job, Bobby, if you will allow me.
Hit me. I have a couple written down, but I think they may be the same.
So I don't know if this one will be feasible just because he recently accepted another job, although you see guys accept jobs and accept other ones. But probably my number one is Skylar Cassidy, who is he was Sam Houston's defensive coordinator this most recent season. They only allowed 20 points per game. Really was the better unit on the team that led the Bearcats to a 9-3 season. Before that, he was a very good DC at the FCS level at Abilene Christian. The rub on him is just that he already accepted a job, but I would think even with U of H's, we'll say, financial challenges relative to other power conference programs, could probably offer him a raise or whatever UNT is offering. It reminds me a lot of Shiel Wood's track record in that he's a guy, he's maybe coached smaller college ball than U of H, but he has coordinated good defenses everywhere he's been. Like, that translates. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, you didn't coach in the SEC. If you can coordinate a good defense at D2, FCS, you can fucking coordinate it here. That was Shiel Wood's resume. He hadn't coordinated power conference defense before this past season. So, but I also really like Jeremiah Johnson, who just finished his first season as the DC at La Tech. The Bulldogs had a top 30 national scoring defense and run defense, but more importantly, he has the experience of coaching a defense on a team with a very suspect offense. Like, La Tech still at 5-7, but it was not due to their defense, which held, I think they lost multiple games this year where they held an opponent to 20 or fewer points, which, boy, if Shiel Wood can relate to, and the Cougar defense from this past year can relate to that one. But not just that, but coached a defense that improved drastically year on year. The year before he got there, 2023, they allowed 33.5 points per game, shaved 13 points off that in one season. Was also on a successful FCS staff in Northern Iowa for a number of seasons when they were a perennial playoff team. Defenses were always good there. Like Johnson a lot, maybe more realistic because he hasn't taken a job yet. Don't know if either of those guys are necessarily the candidates, but those would be the top of my list.
Those are the two I had written down as well. So,
who would you pick then if you had the ability to make it so?
I think I go with the La Tech guy just for experience sake. Skylar has the 1 year at Sam Houston in his FBS resume, and if I recall, the La Tech guy had just a few more. Even at the lower levels, he's been coaching longer, so I think I trust that a little bit more. Skylar was 30 this year. Not that I don't think a 30-year-old can coach good defenses. Like, that's not it at all. I just, for a Big 12 job, I think I'd like somebody who's done it a couple of years.
I actually have the same answer for different reasons, though. I think it's just because, like, I think Cassidy would less likely to leave quickly. Not that he shouldn't. Again, if we can't pay him the opportunity, like, it's how the world works, baby. Like it or lump it. Like, guys will take jobs that pay him more money. Like, that's how this all works. But I would say Johnson, I think you might have a better chance of keeping him around a little bit longer. Like, you see, like, let's say, and we hope he does. Like, Cassidy comes here and does really well next year. You know, maybe more of a risk to leave. So they're very close to me, and that's, I guess, the differentiating thing.
Yeah, I can't necessarily argue with that. Yeah, like you said, I think Jeremiah Johnson might stay a little bit. He's kind of been coaching for a while, and yeah, I think if he does one good year, I don't know, Jeremiah Johnson just kind of feels like a guy who would want to stick it out a couple of years rather than just one in a Big 12 job.
You'd hope. And we got some more coordinators this week in the form of your new offensive coordinator, Slade Nagle, the once and future Cougar offensive coordinator. He was actually the very first name after Willie Fritz got hired. Didn't end up happening. Did this past year as LSU's tight ends coach and special teams coordinator. Remember the initial reporting when he was hired 12-ish months ago had him coming over from Tulane. to take the position here. He was previously Fritz's OC at Tulane, very Louisiana guy, originally from Lake Charles, coached at McNeese, Northwestern State, Central Arkansas, Texas State, was on Fritz's Tulane staff the entire 8 years he was in New Orleans, was only the OC officially for the 2023 season, but I had confirmed by multiple Tulane people previously that he was the play caller for their awesome 2022 offense as well, even if he, I think, only had the tight ends coach title officially, but he was the offensive play caller for all that season. Bobby, what do you like and what have you learned about our new offensive coordinator, Slade Nagle?
Yeah, I don't know if you watched his introductory press conference.
I actually was not able to, so I'm excited for you to clue me in.
Yeah, so he said he never accepted the U of H job, which, okay, no problems there, right? It's kind of a he said, she said thing. But he said it was his dad's final year coaching in the Baton Rouge area, and he wanted to kind of stick around for that. I also think that he thought he had a shot at because he was named interim head coach at Tulane. I think he thought he had a shot at getting that job full time rather than coming here to be the OC. That's just kind of me, just kind of thinking out loud here.
There was some friction, I will say. They ended up like not having Wood and who's the other assistant that came over there, the DB's coach, Christian Young. They ended up not having them, so maybe there's some friction there too. Yeah,
so I just but in terms of offense, that 22 and 23 offenses looked really good for Tulane. Kind of a spread run kind of offense, but they had their quarterback who could throw the ball pretty well. I think the press conference was interesting because he didn't necessarily commit to Zion Chris and said they were going to explore all their options, and you want to make
more to come there.
You protect him. Yeah. But overall, I think it was. Speaking of that, it's kind of funny. Just a side note here on social media, you kind of see any quarterback who enters the portal, like On3 will put like teams that they're top contenders to land this guy, and every single one of them U of H is in like the top 5, and it's like, I get it. So I think we're gonna like what he does. If he does anything like what he did at Tulane, it's gonna go well. He showed that his offenses can work well against Big 12 defenses. He took Oklahoma to the brink a couple of times. Those Tulane teams did. Did they beat them once?
No, they came really close. And
I remember they came close
in 21. It was the game. It was actually supposed to be in New Orleans. They got moved because of a hurricane going.
Yeah, that's right. And so, I think he's shown that those Tulane teams were really good offensively. So, pretty excited to see what he does here.
If nothing else, I think he gets the benefit of the standard being very low. Like the bar he has to clear is not a high one. I mean, I think the Cougar fans have sometimes almost too grandiose, word for it, expectations for what the offense can be, but you won't have to do very much to be better than the 2024 version of Houston Cougar football. And that Tulane 22 offense he called was awesome. They were really balanced. They rushed for over 200 and passed for over 200 yards per game. Tyjae Spears that season was one of the most productive running backs in the country. Michael Pratt threw for over 3,000 yards and rushed for 10 touchdowns. They backslid a little bit his second year there, I will say. I think in no small part due to Tyjae Spears playing for the Tennessee Titans. Pratt had some injury struggles that season as well. He didn't really have a bell cow running back they could lean on like Spears, though. We'll say they all correctly ID'd Mekhi Hughes as a successor to Spears, and he had a really awesome season for Tulane. This season had a pretty solid freshman year in 23 as well. Not a hire that's going to have me booking a flight to DFW for the 2025 Big 12 championship game, but I think the job that Nagle did for Tulane and Fritz's last 2 years there, I think it's underrated. And this offense, if nothing else, will be better for having someone who's coached a long time with Willie Fritz. I mean, before this past season, Kevin Barbay had never coached with Willie Fritz, and I think the offense will be at least somewhat better for having a more unified vision between this head coach and an offensive coordinator that'll be in his 9th season now coaching under Fritz. And I thought we saw some good stuff also in Sean Bell's one game as the interim OC. We saw someone who had a clear, better pulse on what did and didn't work for his offense. So I'm excited for him to return as well. It also, I think, bolsters your staff's bona fides in Louisiana, which is always going to be somewhere U of H has a recruiting presence. Certainly under a head coach like Fritz that's been in the state of Louisiana a long time as well. And I can't believe, Bobby, we are almost 47 minutes into this, almost 45 minutes in, and we're just now talking about the portal. The thing that I think drives all of us college football fans crazy in December. I cannot tell you how many times I've refreshed the 247 transfer portal class of 2025 page in the last 8 or 9 days. I could just suffice to say it is a lot on some big Cougar entries. We're not going to spend the entire time on guys who are leaving because I think there's some pretty exciting dominoes about to fall on the incoming side. But, I mean, you lost some notable players. I think the majority of the players in terms of number were guys who, weren't going to play, did not play a big role in this team and weren't projected to play a big role. That's the majority of, I think, barring, unless you're talking about teams that replaced a coach, I would say the majority of guys that you end up talking about are got something interesting to talk about a little bit later perhaps. Sorry, Bobby messaged me. I'm trying my mental train on track. I think I was going through a long-winded way of saying the majority of guys by number entering are guys who weren't playing a big role in this team, but that could be true for most teams out there. And that you did lose some guys that you would have loved to have back for 2024. Bobby, who's been the biggest name for you in terms of, who's gone in the portal for U of H in the past week? Multiple right answers here.
I think for me it's pretty obvious, and it's Joseph Manjack. That would really hurts to lose, not because there's anything too crazy. He just felt like a leader on this team, a guy who you could depend on to make some plays for you. And it sucks seeing him go. Can you replace a Joseph Manjack? Yeah, sure. But you'd rather have Manjack on your team than have him play somewhere else,
Agreed. Great player. Definitely one of the 2 or 3 right answers to this question. Frankly, I almost play the category of I get it. I would love to have him back here, but if he's just
I think we said that. I think we said that a couple of halfway through the season. I think you and I were just kind of like,
and this wasn't some inside info thing, we were told Manjack's leaving. No, nothing of the sort. It was just kind of we looked at the situation, we're like, yeah, maybe this guy wants to go somewhere they can actually functionally throw the football.
Yeah, and we haven't shown that we can do that. So that was kind of my my thing is I get it. I'm disappointed, but I get it at the end of the day.
Just for the sake of having a different answer, I think mine is Anthony Holmes Jr. Interior defensive lineman left. He was very good. He wasn't the only good defensive lineman. You had Keith Cooper, who's graduating, moving on, hopefully to a pro career. Carlos Allen, who's confirmed he's coming back. You had other good guys.
Keep for the Cougs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Carlos
definitely.
Allen. By the way.
You had some big ones this week, especially in the defensive side of the ball. But Carlos Allen was a big one. But didn't keep Anthony Holmes, who is a fantastic interior defensive lineman, and will probably be playing for a good top 25 level. I will be disappointed because I think Anthony Holmes is that good if he's not playing for as a veteran transfer add-on one of the better defenses out there, because he's that good. And it is a little bit extra disappointment when it's a local kid. And you had a few of those. You had Jonah Wilson and Parker Jenkins, who were both great recruits who flashed different levels of promise. All Northside guys, honestly. Jenkins, Holmes, and Jonah Wilson. And I hate losing all of them, but I think, I think that's I'm not going to say more or less of a loss than Manjack, but that's going to be a guy who's not going to be easily replaced by anyone in the portal. And one of the ones where I was like, damn, I don't usually let myself have this kind of cope, but I'm hoping at least a good defensive coordinator hire changes that, but won't be surprised if it doesn't.
Yep, I agree.
And some other notables here, just going to mention, I mentioned a couple of my name. Parker Jenkins, your most promising running back from a year ago, never really got going this season, kind of fell back behind that trio of freshmen and Stacy Sneed. Jeremiah Wilson, probably should have mentioned him sooner. Jeremiah Wilson, really good cornerback, 4 interceptions for you this season. One of the higher graded corners out there as well. Had that awesome performance against Baylor, had the interception that really set you up for points, and then a return touchdown. And if I had to guess, because I feel with the out-of-state guys, I almost don't even give myself the hope that they're coming back. He's from Florida. If I had to guess, this is not an inside info thing. If I had to guess, a certain Garnet and Gold team that's desperately trying to win is probably throwing around drunk sailor NIL money. is his destination. But that is a total Sam guess, not a like, oh, I'm breaking news on Jeremiah Wilson's recruitment here, but big loss. And you had a number of other guys who kind of met the definition of promising but didn't play or contribute a ton consistently for you, like Talik Robbins and Justin Benton on the defensive line as well. So we'll go a little more positive spin on this because, and I suspect it'll happen officially after we record this podcast, but big portal domino, I think, and it's not a secret at this point because On 3 and Rivals and 247 all have people giving a crystal ball that he's going to be committing to U of H sooner than later. He was on an OV yesterday, Tuesday, to the University of Houston, that Conner Weigman, the former 5-star recruit in Texas A&M, starting quarterback for parts of the last 3 seasons, will be committing imminently to U of H. Not breaking news here. We don't know what's going to happen yet. There's always the possibility that we get like Dewey beats Truman on this, and this is just a time capsule of the 24 hours where we all believed Conner Weigman was going to be the starting quarterback. But obviously, in all likelihood, it's probably going to be announced shortly after the show. In the event of not having for the umpteenth time this season news break right after we record a podcast, Bobby, what have you learned about Weigman and what do you like about him?
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to a write-up that I read from former guests of the pod, Martin. How do you say Martin's last name?
Marroquin.
He did a great write-up on Go Cougs about Weigman and why he likes him and what he doesn't like, and some of the things that he saw on tape, and I believe the big thing was the arm strength issue, but that was a problem that we saw this year. And things I saw with him with A&M, he made good decisions. He made the right throw. It just his year of starting last year, he was really, really, really good at football. And then sometimes stuff happens and you need a change of scenery, and hopefully that is a U of H. 247 On 3. Everyone's kind of put their crystal ball in that it's going to be to U of H. So I would love to see it. I think he's going to, if he does come here, which I certainly hope, I think it's going to be an improvement at the quarterback position for your Houston Cougars.
And I don't want this doesn't win football games, but in an era where buzz and getting guys like, oh, I want to follow this guy has never been more important. That's going to be a big domino. Like that's going to allow U of H for at least part of like the little recruiting news cycle. Like, oh wow, they got Conner Weigman from like Texas A&M. Like is U of H could be a little more serious next year. Like it's like that is going to be, in my opinion, my not very, I think, going on a limb prediction, going to be a nice added benefit. We'll co-sign everything Bobby said. Great write-up by Martin, our one-time guest and contributor over at GoCougs.com about Conner Weigman. That's going to really give you a good primer on the guy. Like, not to be too reductive, there's a reason why this guy was at one time a consensus 5-star, number 2 quarterback in the country kind of guy. Like that's recruiting services. Yes, recruiting misses. Like they're like recruiting is still not an exact science, but there's a reason why this many people like looked at this guy and was like, this guy could be a future 1st, 2nd round draft pick kind of quarterback.
Yeah, he's going to be everyone thought he was going to be very, very good, and he was for a year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we continue to move forward, hopefully move forward with Conner Weigman.
Yeah, and again, like, God knows you need the help in O-line recruiting like that. And you're going to be mostly clearing the deck there. Like most of your guys have either graduated or signaled that they're ending their college career. So it's basically Pancake Hunter and hopefully 4 better offensive linemen than the 4 guys that were with Pancake Hunter this year.
Yeah, and something else interesting that I just kind of noticed scrolling around social media. Have you noticed that we're in contention for just about every tight end that is hit the portal? Like
that was a big thing when Fritz came in.
And I remember saying that. I remember that class last year had like 3 tight ends in it, and then he brought in Carr, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, clearly he's going to use the tight end. Then we didn't see the tight end a lot this year. We saw him at times, but we didn't see him a ton. I would chalk that up without going back and checking it. Just keeping him in for pass pro, right? But yeah, it's certainly interesting, I guess, that it was that we've been linked to just about every tight end that has hit the portal this year.
It's funny, like that many offers, and they had Tanner Koziol, the Ball State tight end, who apparently us in Wisconsin are battling for. Would be that, like, what really jumped out to me about his numbers from Ball State. Like, it wasn't a huge like yards per catch, but they used him as a pretty consistent target. I'm just love to have a tight end that we can use for like 6 to 8 yards in the pass game. Like, we just weren't able to do that this year. And really, that was one of my big complaints during Holgerson's time here too. Was just like it seemed like the passing game was kind of all or nothing. Sometimes it was either dump offs or like 20-yard shots downfield. It's like, God, there's a whole middle there that like we could be using a lot better than we seem to be willing to do.
Yeah, I would love. There's something that this offense has needed, and it's just a guy who will pick you up 5 immediately.
Yeah, have those short passes to be almost an extension of the run game. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're an NFL fan, you just kind of want a Jason Witten, right? Not that you want the Tony Romo, Jason Witten 3rd and 4. Just go run a curl at the sticks, get the ball, go to the ground. That's what I want.
Free yards, man.
Yeah, I'll take it. And if there's one thing this offense needs, it's as many yards as possible for free and easy.
Truly does. Only one other name I want to mention to you. No, I've also seen us go after a number of different kickers.
Yeah.
Really hope Laith Marjan.
Well, we had our kicker enter the portal as well.
Yeah, Joseph Kim, your one returning kicker, and then Jack Martin, I think, is out of eligibility after this year as well. So Laith Marjan, South Alabama kicker, didn't become a full-time place kicker until last season, Bob. I did like the tiniest bit of research, and apparently like he alluded to like a previous coach who told me you'd never be good enough to kick field goals, which you'd have to assume was his first school, ECU, which really kind of effed up there because he was 16 of 17 on field goals for South Alabama this year, second team All Sun Belt. And it wasn't like, okay, I mean, one, I would take someone who was 16 of 17 and just reliable inside of 40 at this point, but was like, I think it was like 6 of 7 outside of 40 yards. So it was still reliable from distance as well. Like I don't think he's going to be a Lou Groza Award winner, but would come in here and just be drastically better than what we've had in the kicking game the last few seasons if we get Mr. Marjan's services.
Yep.
All right, so real quick, we're going to talk about the 2025 Cougar football signing day as well. We're not going to do a 19-person breakdown of the class, but we did have the football signing day last week. You signed 19 of the 20 previous commits that you had on signing day. The one you didn't, Kyle Johnson, was a signing day Mississippi State flip, which wasn't really a surprise. I think I saw before you had multiple recruiting services projecting a Mississippi State flip, and really it was a surprise when we gave you a verbal commitment over them in the first place. Certainly want to hold on to every verbal you can get, but it's at least good to see that this staff is going after guys who are getting looks by SEC staffs, if nothing else. And again, not going to go player by player because frankly, we don't have the time to give all 19 guys serious analysis. Bobby, who are the 2 players from this class that you think are worth mentioning on here?
So I'm actually going to say 3. I'm sorry. You can do that to me.
That's fine.
Number 1 is Demetrius Dean, big O lineman, offers from Baylor, A&M, UCF, Tech. Those were his Power 4 offers. I've said this before. I like looking at offer sheets. Stars are great. I love looking at stars. You know, you do better with 5 stars than you do 2 stars typically. It's not like your top schools are constantly getting nothing but 2 stars and they're winning with him. U of H did it on a lower level, but once you reach the level we're at now, you kind of want some of those high 3s, low 4s, sneaking a 5 every so often. Demetrius Dean, 4-star kid from Jasper, but has a great offer list as well. And then I'm putting 2 together, so this is why it's 3. You have 2 kids from Full Shear, and I'm interested in what this Full Shear pipeline will look like going forward. You have 2 D linemen. First is Chance Bryant. Not a very impressive offer list. Cougs are the only P4 program, but really interesting to see them go after this kid, as well as Sheldon Rice. Sheldon Rice is his teammate, a high 3-star. You could maybe even make a case that he might be a low 4-star. I think his point total was 89, and I think the deal there is you go 90 gets you a 4-star. So he's right there on the border. High 3-star. Offers from Tech, SMU, Pitt, Michigan State, Kansas, Cal, Arizona, Baylor, and TCU. If you're beating those schools out, then we're not the only ones who thought this kid was good, right? But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that we have 2 kids from the same school. I do wonder if you go to recruit Sheldon Rice and then all of a sudden you see Chance Bright and you're like, hey, wait a minute, that kid's not bad either. So both played defensive line, so just really kind of interesting there.
I also had Demetrius Dean as one of my 2 players. Consensus 4-star, top 250 prospect in his class. But I have him just because he's the O-line prospect that, like, you don't need to land 5 of them per class. That's a bit ambitious. But, like, you need to land at least 1 guy per class that's of his caliber if you really want to get this position group good enough to seriously compete in the Big 12. What I liked most what I read about him was that multiple people said he was good at a number of different things. And I think that's the kind of thing that probably correlates well to being able to make a really big jump. And I don't know if any position group is a more challenging jump from high school to college than offensive line. And that he's been able to be good at a number of things tells me he's the kind of guy who can maybe translate. My second guy, and I kind of went under the radar on this one. I want to talk about one guy who's one of the higher rated guys and one guy who might be more likely to escape surface level of analysis like we're doing of the class of 2025. Blake Hogshooter, a receiver from Bixby, Oklahoma.
I know why you picked him.
What? Look. In all seriousness, like a 6'4" receiver from, again, did we just lose another tall white guy receiver, Bobby, in the not too distant past? And also, I'm not saying he's gonna be Joseph Manjack. You just, in the simplest level, I like the look of someone who could eventually develop into a go-to red zone target in the next 2 or 3 seasons. I'm not expecting him by 2025, but maybe by 26, 27, we start to see him a bit more in the field. And again, you didn't really you had that guy in Manjack this past year, but you didn't have the passing offense to actually get him the ball in those situations more often than not. So I'd like to think by the time that Mr. Hogshooter is like a redshirt sophomore I'd hope in the next 2 seasons, but certainly by the time that he's ready to be in the field, that he's able to be that guy to fill that role for this team. Hopefully sooner. That would be cool. But the fact that he was on one of the best Oklahoma prep programs at Bixby, and yeah, I think he's gonna be a good one for us when it's all said and done. Also, this isn't me just doing an extended bit to get his name in the show. It's a cool ass name, but yeah. I genuinely do think he is going to be a contributing receiver for us when it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree there.
Yeah, I would say just on the whole, solid. Right now, it's just inside the top 50 class. If you have realistic expectations of what you think U of H should be doing recruiting-wise, I think you should be pretty happy with the staff has done with this class. Not over the moon. And I think now the missing piece is what does the staff do in terms of adding transfer players? Because the quarterback we spent a good deal of time talking about a bit earlier, Conner Weigman, would probably be a good start on that. And I think you get that whole picture, pretty exciting.
Yep.
We're going to swing to Cougar volleyball here for a little bit. We were tight on time last week, but we owe everybody a catch-up on what's been going on in the world of Cougar volleyball. Ended their season going 1-1 since we have last talked about them on this show. Kind of, not surprisingly, lost 3-1 in their last road trip of the season at Texas Tech. Unfortunately, not able to revenge one of the more unexpected and decisive home losses of the current season. But you did get to end the season on a happy note. On senior day, Kate Georgiaz, Andy Cook, and a number of other players last game of the program defeated Colorado pretty soundly 3-0 at the Fertitta Center. So nice note to end it on. I hope a number of y'all took Bobby on his pep talk the last time we talked about volleyball to go see this team and go support a number of really significant Cougar athletes in their final contest at the Fertitta Center. What do you think is notable about these past 2 matches, Bobby? Anything you'd like to talk about there?
Nothing overly notable outside of the fact that it's always good to end your season on a win, no matter what it looks like. Just really proud of the seniors. This I don't know if you've seen this on the social media pages Sam, but on their YouTube channel in particular, the Houston Athletics.
I saw I did some sit downs with the volleyball players. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like letters to my younger self, and it's just really cool to see them do that with these seniors.
Yeah, I watched the Annie Cook and I believe Angela Grieve ones. Very good concept and really well done.
Very, very good.
Yeah, 1-3-0. Won your final match of the year 3-0. 3 pretty emphatic margins. Never trailed in either of the first 2 sets, and to their credit, did come back to win the last one of the season. We're down as much as 7-3 in the third set before taking it by a 25-19 final. Notable senior performances besides the 2 athletes we've mentioned already, Kate Georgiadis and Annie Cook. Katie Corelli and Angela Grieve led the Cougars in kills, and Rebecca Ricasson had a double-double in her final Cougar game, 14 assists and 10 digs. So that ends your season, 7-11 Big 12 record, no conference tournament in volleyball, and I think some encouraging things from the season, but also some questions still left to answer. You do return some promising young players like Addison Pohl, Lily Barron, and Ashlyn Bellamy. Avery Shemitis became a much bigger part of the offense as the season progressed. She's projected to come back. You have Kellen Moran returning at middle blocker. Your biggest, I think, addition was a player that missed all the season, Kellen Moran, who was injured in the offseason. And you also have Barakat Rahman, who had to take on a much bigger role in Marin's absence this year. You get the 2 of them. And this past season was a younger lineup than the past 3 seasons. So I think there are some reasons for optimism, but we're also talking about replacing some really cornerstone program players, replacing Kate Georgiadis, Annie Cook at libero and setter respectively. That's not an easy task. Your top 2 setters this season, Cook and Rebecca Ricasson, are both out of eligibility. You do have Elena Torres Rivera, who played in 75 sets this season as Kate Georgiadis' backup, so maybe you give her the inside track over Georgiadis, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the staff looks at some liberos in the portal, which it's hard to remember this far back, but look, actually that's how Georgiadis came to us. So she played her first college season at TCU before playing her Final Four here. Yeah, I had almost like memory hold that when I was like talking about that. I was like, well, you're in the portal, you can't find Kate Georgiadis in the portal. It's like, well, you did once.
Well, I'll be damned.
You did once. I will say it is probably a tall task to find her twice. But I do trust the staff to find some quality players in the portal because they've done it many, many times before.
Absolutely.
And also, and I was gonna say, and Cougar women's basketball also competed in games that counted. Unfortunately, in one of those cases in the past week. Bobby, what happened?
The Cougars can't score. You go into Arlington and you played the University of Texas Arlington, and I unfortunately had something else going on, and you lose by 4 to UTA. This is a UTA team that lost by 25 to SMU, lost by 18 to Purdue, lost by 28 to Arkansas, lost by 11 to La Tech, and lost by 19 to Arizona. And they beat you by 4.
And like UTA has been good. Some of the I'd say UTA has been good a decent number of the years that we've done this podcast. Not this one.
They're 3-5. You were up 5 at the end of the first quarter. You were up 5 at the end of the first half. And you get outscored 9 in the second half to a bad UTA team. You get out-rebounded 44-32. You shoot 35% from the field, which for this team isn't terrible, until you realize UTA shot 46.2%, and their three-point percentage was higher than your field goal percentage. It's not good, man. And there's no other way to say it, but it's just not good. And then you look at the next game versus Southeast Louisiana, which Southeast Louisiana, I'm not trying to say they're good, but they lost by 10 to Nebraska. They have wins over Charlotte, over Southern Miss, Memphis. They got a 6-point win over Memphis. They beat a Louisiana Tech team by 12. So, it's good you got that win, but when you kind of look at it, you feel like you got a little lucky. They outshot you. You had more turnovers than they did. but you beat them 42-32 on the boards, and you outshot them from 3, 25% to 17%. Feels like you kind of got lucky in that game, doesn't it? And Sam, not that I want to talk about this women's basketball team more than I absolutely have to, but I don't know if this team wins a conference game this year. I don't see it happening, man. As much as I would love for them to, I don't see where we get the win.
Yeah, and there's some not great teams, and U of H is kind of part of the Big 12, so it's not impossible, but unfortunately, if you gave me an over-under of a half, I'd probably take the under on that. Probably wouldn't even get good value on that under. I mean, we're talking about a team that shot 7 of 34 in the second half against UT Arlington.
What are they going to do against a team like TCU?
Yeah, I don't want to imagine it. Like TCU's,
I can't believe I'm going to go to that game.
I mean, you see Haley Van Lith, who's a really electric player, actually play on a team that knows how to use her. Like that's I don't want to make the sell on attending the game the other team's best player. Sedona Prince is a really good post player as well. Might be finally healthy for a full season in their career, the first time.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I'll give some genuine, not snide praise to Cougar women's basketball, Bobby. They were down to 5 healthy scholarship players at the end of that Southeast Louisiana game because you had Iola Love and Layla Blair foul out later on. That they still found a way to win, that they shot 76%. That's another non-snide compliment. 76% from the charity stripe on 30 attempts. That's very good. One of the really vexing things about this team is that it might be the best free throw shooting team that Ronald Huey's had. Unfortunately, the rest of the things that they do involving putting the ball in the basket have been a big-time struggle.
Yeah, not great.
You have Mississippi Valley State up next Tuesday. Should be your 4th win of the season. And then, kind of like we talked about, not sure how many wins are left in the schedule because that is your last game before Big 12 play, which begins the week of Christmas, I believe.
Yeah.
Or the weekend before Christmas, I want to say.
Let me look here.
It's too far in advance. Was it the weekend before Christmas?
Yes, sir. The 22nd.
Look at that. Without even having the schedule in front of me. Look at that. It's almost like I host a podcast about Cougar sports or something.
Yes, sir.
We're not going to talk about it this week, but I just wanted to note we will talk about the tennis schedule that was released a week or so ago next week because it's not especially time sensitive and because we were running up against our various time deadlines now. But we'll talk about that, give it the time it deserves, rather than me rushing through a season that I'm pretty excited to talk about. So we'll have that next week along with a whole other helping of Cougar happenings to talk about. Bobby, why'd you take us home?
All right, well, that's it for this week's podcast. We appreciate you guys listening. If you want to give us some feedback, you can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social, and we will gladly answer you there. We still check the Twitter occasionally. I will sometimes even throw up a tweet just out of a snide comment that Sam and I have about something. I'll sometimes throw it up there just for fun. But mainly you're going to find us on Blue Sky now. We want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. You guys are absolute rock stars. If you want to give us some feedback, you can also email us. If you're an old school email type person, you can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. Again, we'd love for your support on Patreon, patreon.com/shpodcast. You can find us on there. For as little as $5 a month, Sam, I think, has missed a couple of games, but not too many. Basketball.
I just missed the Vegas week, and we're caught.
Yeah, which we'll give him the bye because it was Thanksgiving week. He was traveling, but he did even put some more thoughts out there. So overall, Sam's doing that. We got some other premium content that we're kind of running through our brains about how we're going to handle it if we want to do it, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to get some awesome content as little as $5 a month. If you want to give us more, we will gladly take it. And Sam, what do we always say here?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's